We're digging up the first ever searcher shaft on Oak Island.
True.
Well, we think.
That we know of.
Yeah.
That's right.
But the big goal is to get good, solid pieces of the...
Think of the money pit as a bank vault. For more than 200 years, that's where everyone has been digging. But the team may have just discovered the bank teller's station half a mile away on Lot 5. A newly uncovered deep iron object found alongside old glass and pottery isn't just some random artifact. It's a full archaeological scene. See right there? Yep. More. There's more stuck up. Right now, the wood they're uncovering looks very similar to what they saw in Shaft 2, but they need to expose more before they can be certain. What they're seeing suggests a permanent working structure, located just feet from clues that could finally link the entire Oak Island mystery to the Knights Templar. And this is no ordinary spoil pile. For decades, all the action and all the drama of Oak Island has centered on one location, the money pit. It's the deep, mysterious hole that has swallowed fortunes and crushed dreams for over 2 centuries. But here's the twist. This entire time, the real answer may have been sitting just beneath the surface nearly half a mile to the west. That's Lot 5. And what the team just uncovered there isn't just another coin. Once it gets back to the lab, they'll scan it, test it, and determine exactly what caliber it is. This could be a total game changer. Here's what happened. Metal detection expert Gary Drayton and Peter Fernetti were working alongside the archaeology team led by Fiona. They were investigating a huge, mysterious stone foundation near the shoreline, sifting through spoil piles, dirt previously dug up last year from that strange round feature. But Gary wasn't just checking old dirt, he was also scanning the untouched ground around it. And here's the important part. In 2024, the government of Nova Scotia officially designated this section of Lot 5 as an archaeologically sensitive zone. That means Gary and Peter can't just dig freely. Anytime their detector hits, they must stop and call in the archaeologists. This isn't simple treasure hunting anymore. It's careful, methodical excavation. Almost immediately, Gary picked up a signal, not from the spoil pile, but from untouched earth, in situ. Fiona came over and carefully excavated. What they found was small but meaningful. A squashed piece of lead shot, a bullet. On its own, maybe not a huge moment, but most people don't realize that this piece matches perfectly with other gun-related artifacts previously discovered on Lot 5, like musket balls and a rifle ramrod guide. Looking closely, they noticed a notch and a socket, another sign it was weapon-related. Some said it looked a lot like a ramrod guide. The astonishing part? These items date back to the 1600s, over 100 years before the money pit story even began. Clearly, someone armed and active was on this land long ago. But that was just the beginning. Gary got another hit, this time iron. It looked like part of a door hinge or maybe a piece of a locking mechanism. Another big clue. If people were here in the 1600s and they had things to lock, they weren't just passing through. They were securing something important. Then came the breakthrough. Gary got a screamer, a loud, high-pitched signal that meant a large metal object buried deep. Fiona rushed over and began digging carefully, scraping away layers of soil. Gary joked that this was worm tickler territory, about 10 inches down. But then she stopped suddenly. She had spotted glass. Not modern clear glass, but old green glass. Wow, that's different from all the others we found. Look at the striations. That means it's a wound bead. A wound bead is created using a different technique than the Venetian beads they'd previously found. Instead of stretching out long strings of glass and cutting them, wound beads are formed by winding molten glass around a rod. As Fiona continued clearing the area, she uncovered a piece of coarse earthenware pottery, and right beside it lay the large iron object that had triggered the detector. This wasn't a random scattering of debris. It was a concentrated cluster of artifacts. That's when Fiona made the call. Stop the dig. Why? Because when an archaeologist finds multiple different types of items from the same era, all buried together in one small area, it isn't a trash pit. It's a feature. It could be the corner of a foundation, the remains of a small cellar, or part of a structure no one knew existed. And the most astonishing part? This new feature, a cluster of iron, glass, and pottery, was uncovered just 4 feet from where the team had found the starburst and spiral buttons, the very objects believed to potentially connect Oak Island to the Knights Templar. This wasn't just another artifact find. It was an archaeological scene pointing straight toward the island's oldest mystery. But even more compelling, this cluster wasn't found in some random patch of forest. It sat right beside an even larger enigma, the Angel's darkest secret. To understand why this new discovery is so shocking, you need to know the original story from the Book of Enoch. The standard version is already extraordinary. It describes 200 Watcher angels descending onto Mount Hermon, led by an angel named Semyasa. They saw human women and lusted after them, committing their first sin. They then made a pact, swearing to follow through with their plan. They descended to Earth, took human women, and the women gave birth to giants, the Nephilim, said to be 450 feet tall. Meanwhile, back on Oak Island, the team noticed a stone platform. It wasn't embedded naturally in the soil, suggesting it had been intentionally placed there, not dropped by glaciers. Another clue worth noting. According to Enoch, the giants devoured all of humanity's food and eventually turned to eating humans. But the story goes further. It says the fallen Watchers taught humanity forbidden knowledge. One angel, Azazel, taught men how to make swords, knives, and shields, the foundations of warfare. He taught women the arts of deception, including jewelry making and cosmetics. Other angels taught sorcery, astrology, and root cutting for medicines, skills that would eventually pull humanity away from purity and toward corruption. That alone was already a staggering tale. But the newly uncovered page, a lost chapter found in the Garima Gospels, adds an even darker layer. The old text was merely a summary. The lost chapter is far more detailed. It explains that the Watcher's greatest sin wasn't just teaching humans how to craft weapons, it was teaching them to desire violence. The lost chapter describes humanity before the Watchers as peaceful but incomplete, simple beings who lived in harmony with the earth. We had no inner fire, no ambition, no rage, and no sense of individual self over the group. The Watchers saw this and didn't simply educate humanity, they altered humanity. The lost chapter describes a ritual in which the Watchers opened the minds of humans. They didn't just give knowledge, they planted something within us, a seed, a shadow of their own fire. This seed was the true knowledge of good and evil. It was the spark of ambition, greed, ego, and the capacity for self-destruction. As the Oak Island team continued their work, they reassessed the stone-lined feature. At first, they had assumed it was the continuation of a structure's wall, and that the area beside it was merely a basement. But the lost chapter makes it clear, the Watchers didn't just corrupt humanity with ideas, they changed humanity physically. They unlocked something buried deep in our blueprint, something God had intentionally kept dormant. It was a flaw, a crack in the design that the Watchers pried open. Through that crack in humanity's design, the Watchers poured their own essence, pride, rebellion, and chaos. The Nephilim, the giants, weren't simply the result of their forbidden unions. They were the first experiment. The new chapter calls them a failure. The successful experiment, according to the text, was what they did to us. The Watchers didn't just teach humanity, they rewrote human nature itself, and that leads to the most disturbing idea in this lost chapter. The suggestion that humanity's darkest impulses might not be entirely our own. Think about it. Why does humanity repeatedly choose conflict? Why does history read like a chain of wars, destruction, and rebuilding? Why do we create remarkable civilizations only to tear them apart? According to this ancient text, it isn't simply human nature. It's corruption woven into our code. As the Oak Island team worked, someone called out, "I think I found it. The metal head." Yeah, looks like a button. But the text itself describes something far more profound. A seed or glitch implanted by the Watchers, referred to as a time bomb inside the human soul. This idea is terrifying because it suggests that when someone feels overwhelming rage, envy, or a hunger for power, they are experiencing the echo of the Watchers' original rebellion. Most people don't realize this implies we are a hybrid species, not physically, but spiritually, part created, part corrupted. The Lost chapter says, this is why humans alone act against their own survival. A deer doesn't pollute its own water. A bird doesn't invent a weapon capable of erasing its species. But we do, and we do it repeatedly. The text describes this corruption as a bottomless hunger. The reason billionaires chase more billions. The reason empires always push for one more conquest. A spiritual sickness. A fever of the soul that the Watchers infected us with. And the most frightening revelation? The chapter says the corruption is permanent. It passes from generation to generation. As the Oak Island crew noted while examining the mysterious structure, it's starting to curve in, which is strange. Too big to be a house. Definitely an occupational site. The Watchers' interference didn't just change humanity, it shaped us into beings capable of mastering the world, but cursed to eventually destroy it and ourselves. This knowledge is devastating. It suggests that humanity's struggle for peace isn't merely a moral choice, but an internal battle against a foreign influence that has lived within us for thousands of years. The real monster isn't one descending from the sky, it's the one already inside us. And according to the text, this glitch has a purpose, guiding humanity toward a dark final outcome. This brings us to an enormous question. If this knowledge is so important, why has it been hidden? Why was this chapter concealed? And why was the Book of Enoch excluded from the Standard Bible at all? The answer points to a deliberate cover-up, an ancient conspiracy. Most people don't realize that the Book of Enoch was extremely popular in early Christianity. Early church fathers quoted it frequently. The biblical Book of Jude even references it directly. Meanwhile, on Oak Island, the team noted that the land had changed dramatically. Once covered in topsoil and trees, erosion had stripped it down to bedrock, meaning anything lost here long ago would settle against rock, making discoveries more intact. For over 225 years, the entire Oak Island legend has rested on a single story. That in 1795, 3 teenage boys found a depression in the ground, noticed a tackle block in a tree, and began digging, uncovering the first stones of what became known as the Money Pit. But that story is now undeniably wrong, and the new discoveries on Lot 5 are the final proof. Here's what most people overlook. The artifacts found on Lot 5, the gun parts, the buttons, and now the cluster of 17th century glass and pottery, all date consistently to the 1600s. That's more than a century before the official Money Pit story even begins. The artifacts uncovered on Lot 5 date from roughly 1620 to 1680, more than a century before Daniel McGinnis and his friends supposedly discovered the Money Pit. And that changes absolutely everything. It means the people who originally deposited something on Oak Island were not the ones digging in the late 1700s. The real origin of the mystery lies on Lot 5, with a group that arrived a full 100 years earlier. This flips the entire story. The Oak Island tale doesn't begin at the Money Pit at all. It begins on Lot 5. Think about what that suggests. A highly organized group, possibly the Knights of Malta or another order descended from the Templars, came to this small island in the 1600s. They weren't just passing through or hiding something quickly. They built permanent stone structures. They established a base. They stayed for years, maybe even decades, working on a massive secret project. So what was that project? This is where the Money Pit comes back into the story, but in a completely different light. The evidence on Lot 5 points to it being the command center, the living quarters, the workspace, the protected hub. And if that's true, then maybe these 17th century occupants were the ones who eventually created the Money Pit. Constructing something as complex as the Money Pit, with engineered flood tunnels, layers of platforms, and sophisticated planning, would have taken enormous labor, time, and coordination. This wasn't the work of pirates on a quick stopover, but a group that lived on the island for years, with a permanent stone base, absolutely could have built it. That's why the newly discovered cluster of iron, glass, and pottery is so critical. It proves they weren't occasional visitors. They were long-term residents. Lot 5 wasn't just another dig site, it was the home base. The money pit wasn't the beginning of the mystery. It was the end result of whatever they started on Lot 5. This completely rewrites the timeline and replaces the old narrative with one that's older, deeper, and far more complex. The team isn't hunting pirate loot anymore. They're uncovering the remains of a highly organized, well-funded secret operation from the 1600s, possibly connected to one of the most powerful secret societies in history. And if that's true, we're left with one astonishing question, the one that changes the entire hunt forever. So let's look at the facts. Hard evidence: lead shot iron artifacts, 17th century green glass. Coarse earthenware pottery. Contextual evidence: a large man-made round stone foundation. Speculative evidence: ornate buttons that appear linked to the Knights Templar. All of it comes from Lot 5. All of it dates to before the money pit. This new cluster of artifacts is now officially recognized as an archaeological site. Work will move slowly and carefully because of its protected status, but that only makes the discovery more significant. And now, the question everyone has to ask: has Lot 5 just become the new money pit? Was this truly a Templar base, or something entirely different? Tell us what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.